Okay, I want to jump straight now into our conversations this afternoon. And first off, I want to, just ask Manwei, as a sustainability consultant, Manwei, could you share with us your views of how this sustainability ecosystem has evolved over the years, in particularly looking at the rise of entrepreneurs in this space? Manwei, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks, TJ. Well, thanks to ERIA for inviting me. So really happy to come here and really share with all of you what I know, right? But also at the same time, because sustainability is a really fast evolving sector. So I'm also here to learn from the distinguished panelists, as well as from all of you out there, right? So maybe I'd like to start by invoking the first line from A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens, right? Which is that it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness, right? So why that resonates with me is because I think we all know, right? So like, because if you look at sustainability, if you look at some of the big rocks or the big issues within sustainability, so one would be climate change. And then one, maybe from a social sustainability point of view, would be global inequality. Right, so these are really big rocks. These are very, very challenging issues, right? And then and as we look ahead, in fact, come in less than 2 weeks' time, so the COP, so that's the Conference of Parties. All the countries will be meeting, right? Hopefully to make some headway on climate action, right? So we all know, we at least those of us in the sector, we every time there's a big conference, right? So we look at it with a lot of anticipation, excitement, as well as some anxiety as well. So these are challenging times, right? So certainly, right? So, but at the same time, I don't think it's all doom and gloom, right? So notwithstanding that the IPCC, in fact, in 2 months ago, they released a new report to say that we would definitely very, very likely hit our 1.5C global warming within the next 1 to 2 decades, right? So, and so to me, I tend to be an optimist at heart. So, and then I would say that really in times of difficulty and when there are risks, right, we can also find possibilities and opportunities, right? So, and I've seen really that because I've been doing this, I've been running my own business for 3 years, and prior to that, I was in Sentosa for almost 10 years. So I've really been working on sustainability for more than a decade, and I'm actually very excited that I do see a lot of entrepreneurs, right? Some are seasoned entrepreneurs, some are really very passionate youth coming out of school, and then they want to do something about making a difference, right? Because if you think about it, what keeps all of us in sustainability going is that it's really one sector where you can really combine doing well and doing good, right? So and I find that very satisfying and challenging, and really and I always look forward to working, right, almost every day. Yeah. So maybe I'd like to frame this, if we look at it as the opportunity, right? So I would really like to kind of look at it at 2 parts, right? So one is really what is the bigger market opportunity, right? Then I'll just mention briefly about what are some specific opportunities, right? So first and foremost is that there is actually a lot of funding going into this sector, right? So for instance, there's this Global Sustainable Investment Alliance. So they reported that this is quite a staggering figure, right? That sustainable investing assets has reached US $35 billion in 2020. And there is a 15% increase over 2 years ago in 2018, right? So there's a lot of funding going into this sector, right? So, and we all know, right, at least for those of us who have tried our hand in getting something off the road, you need the funding to get things moving, right? I think at the same time, Kanta, for instance, so their market research firm, they found that they did a Asia foundational study which was published in July 2021, and they found that 58% of consumers will want to invest time and money to support responsible companies, right? So in other words, consumer sentiments are changing. People are not only want to buy more green products and services, but they're also willing to, put money where their mouth is, right? So these are, so in that sense, these are really a big kind of tectonic shift, right, in really how the market is funded and really what are some of the consumer preferences. So equally, right, I think businesses also want to go green. So, and I do quite a bit of work for corporates that supply to the MNCs, right? And increasingly they're telling me that they want to be sustainable. They want to do sustainability reporting because their big clients are asking for this. Okay, so that's really the market movement, right? And then if we really zero in terms of the opportunities, I think there are a few kind of big buckets, right? So one, of course, there is renewable energy, because the cost of renewable energy has come down very dramatically. And really, if you're building a new solar plant, actually costs less to produce every kilowatt hour of energy compared to building a gas-fired or a coal power plant. Okay, so renewable energy is one bucket. Two is that, and I'm sure all of you would have seen this in the supermarkets, we see the advent of more plant-based food materials, right? Say ingredients, right? And of course, there is the Beyond Burgers, right? So because, and it's actually quite a compelling case, right? Because first, this shift towards a plant-based diet, it takes it takes less resources to produce, say, every pound of protein. And at the same time, it's also better for the environment, and it's also better for health, right? So this is really a big opportunity. And I've also seen new startups with very exciting ideas, right? In fact, I just came across this Singapore startup called handprint.tech. So later on, I'll post it in the chat function. So and what they do is that they provide a plugin, right? So let's say if I'm an e-retailer, so they'll provide a plugin that I can very easily incorporate into my storefront, and then I can allow my customers when they check out to use some money to invest some money in, say, buying an offset, or to contribute towards planting a tree. Or even for me as the retailer, I can actually use this plugin to give back to the community, right? Say out of, say, every $100 of revenue, I can set aside, let's say, $2 or $3, right? And then this is actually made known to my customers. Yeah, so they're actually gaining traction. So I just checked in with them earlier this week. So and this is very exciting, right? Because there are all these because as the whole sustainability sector moves, right? So there are all these kind of market connecting opportunities that come about, right? So I have one more point, which is that I think in the realm of sustainability, we're fairly focused on environmental sustainability. But I hope that, if let's say as an entrepreneur or as an entrepreneur wannabe, I think, or even as a funder, I think it's actually good to look at social sustainability as well. So, and there's this concept called the bottom of the pyramid, right? So, which is basically that there are a lot of underserved consumers out there. So particularly in the less developed countries. And again, I'd like to give an example of this really interesting social enterprise coming out of the US. So and the problem they wanted to address was really that if you look at some of the poorer communities, they have a hard time, the families, they cannot afford proper shoes for their children. Not only that, either that or because kids grow very quickly, right? For those of us who are parents, we would know. And then they outgrow their shoes very quickly. So what this social enterprise did was that they designed and manufactured a shoe. It's called the shoe that grows, right? So in other words, it's a shoe that actually you can adjust the straps and so on, and it expands 5 sizes, right? So it can last, so instead of lasting for 6 months to a year, it can last for 2 or 3 years or even more, right? So they have productized this, and then their initial model was that they had impact funding, and then they actually then distributed it to a good number of countries. And it's such a popular idea that, in fact, they are now commercializing it in the US as well, right? So in other words, I thought it's a great example of a BOP concept that works. and also not only in terms of catering to the underserved market, right? But it's also commercializable. So that way, if you think about it, then eventually they can evolve financially sustainable model in that their, say, the for-profit operations could then subsequently fund, right, their humanitarian or non-profit efforts. Yeah. So okay. So I'll just pause here and kind of hand it back to TJ. Yeah. So yeah, again, excited to be here and looking forward to interacting with all of you this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Manwei. You shared a lot of things. I was really just scrambling to take down some notes as well. But the shoe that grows, very interesting concept. Yeah. Maybe if you could also put it into the chat box for the participants to take a look. Manwei, yeah. We've heard quite a bit in terms of I think what can and should happen on perhaps at a higher level, at a policy level, at a governmental level, but from your perspective as an entrepreneur, for this whole ecosystem and I guess the entrepreneurs that have begun to spring up within this ecosystem, but for them to continue thriving, what do you think are important factors to consider? We'll be happy to hear from you.
Yeah, thanks, TJ. I think first and foremost, I don't think there'll be a post-pandemic world, right? So it'll be, because I mean, if you look at it, we just have to coexist, right? So I think we're really looking at a co-pandemic recovery, right? So and to me, the silver lining from this whole COVID-19 global crisis is that it shows that the world can come together, right? I mean, we can mobilize, right? I mean, we've seen that in terms of the corporate sector, we've seen that in terms of partnerships, right, across tri-sectors. We've seen that in terms of countries, right? And of course, if you look at, say, support for the COVAX program, it can be better. But I think again, at least a good number of the developed countries have stepped forward. Okay, so maybe to answer your question, I think what we need to do is really to build a sustainable ecosystem, right? So for green or sustainable entrepreneurship to flourish. So then I would look at it maybe from the perspectives of the, I think there are three key parties involved. So one will be the entrepreneurs themselves. And when Nicola mentioned about greenwashing and rainbow washing, it really resonated with me because because these days I do get approached by a good number of startups, right? And then they're all they have an idea, right? And then they are like, oh, Manwei, can we talk to you? Can we touch base with you? And can you be our sustainability advisor, right? So usually then I always ask them, can you send me your deck, right? So and why I do that is because I think it's always good to really be clear about what is the sustainability angle, right? Say as an entrepreneur, right? So because I think out there's the risk of greenwashing, and there's also the risk of misinformation or lack of information as well, right? So that's why I always encourage entrepreneurs to do their research and then be clear about what makes their product or service sustainable, right? So I think that's one. So in other words, the entrepreneurs themselves must level up. And equally, I think the entrepreneurs must also be clear about what they want to achieve and what is their business model, right? So because in the realm of sustainability, again, right, so there's environmental sustainability, there's social sustainability. Certain things are bankable. That means in the sense that you can sell it, like I think the shoe that grows, right? So there is a commercial angle to it. But let's say, because I also do some work in the disability sector, and I can see that a lot of the social enterprises there, the charities there, if you look at the services that they are rendering and the things that they want to do, they're not really commercial, right? So that means you can't sell those products and services directly to the market, or at least you will not be able to generate sufficient revenue stream to support all the things that you want to do, right? So in which case, then if you have an idea like that, then chances are you might need to look for either impact funding and or donations. Yeah. So in other words, from an entrepreneur's point of view, they need to be clear about what is a sustainability angle, and two is that how would they finance what they want to do. Okay, so that's on the entrepreneur's perspective. Then the second group would really be the funders, right? So, and I did mention that very big number, about $30 billion, right? So, but I think at the same time, my sense is that I think there's still a lot more funders out there who want to support things which are commercializable and sustainable at the same time, right? So, and there are a few, but I would say that, I mean, more often than not, sometimes there's a bit of a trade-off. So what I hope to see is really, really more impact investors, right, coming to the fore, right? And then in that they would value the social impact, the environmental and social impact as much as the commercial returns, right? So because we need that, right? So because it's only if these investors, they can have a bit of a mindset shift, then I think the whole sector would flourish. Okay, then the third player would be the government. I think Nicola had made some fantastic points about what role the government can play. So maybe I would just like to add a couple more points. So one is that I think the government plays a very big role in signaling, right? So in terms of that, you know, they want this sector to grow, like in Singapore, for instance, a couple of months back, the Singapore government launched the Singapore Green Plan, right? So, and I thought that's a really well thought out plan in that it had a few kind of critical pillars and with specific initiatives, right? And the government didn't stop there, right? And then in fact, they've followed through. So, and then they have actually created platforms for, say, members of the public to give their views, as well as even in terms of test bidding platforms. So whereby they would say put out a grant call, right, to say that and there was a specific example, right, because in Singapore with this, well, TJ will be familiar with this, with this offshore man-made island called Jurong Island. So where you have many chemicals companies that are anchored there, right? So and then the government recently launched a grant call to invite proposals to implement green ideas on the island in partnership with the companies there, and the government would fund these initiatives. So I think that's a fantastic thing to do, right? Because in that sense, you create that partnership model, and by providing funding, you help to de-risk you know, what the entrepreneurs have to go through, right? Okay, then just one more final point about what the government can do is I feel it's really to create a level playing field, right? So maybe I give an example, and this is also related to plastic waste, right? So because for a long time, well, at least finally in Singapore, after many months and years of deliberation, the Singapore government has finally announced that they are looking into a charge for use of consumption of plastic bags in Singapore, right? So, and that's because hitherto, how the model works in Singapore is that it was pretty much left to the different establishments, right? The supermarkets, the F&B, restaurants, and so on. It's up to them to decide whether or not they want to charge for plastic bags. So, and it's quite interesting because I used to have some interactions with the supermarkets, and then what they were telling me is that they felt that wasn't fair to those of them who wanted to be green, because they said that very often they might, sometimes they'll face a backlash from their customers saying that, oh, why are you charging me for a plastic bag, right? So are you trying to profiteer from this and so on, right? And then, so there was really disparate practices, right? So some of them charge, some of them incentivize if you bring your bag and so on. And then there was actually quite a bit of confusion on the part of the consumers, right? So that's an example, right? So, and I think a plastic charge is great, right? Because it levels the playing field across all the different establishments. For the men in the street, it's easier for them to connect, right? To kind of join the dots to understand what's going on, right? So of course, there will be a small number of people who will not be will not take to this policy change well, but eventually they will have to get round to it, right? So okay. So just to summarize very quickly, I think we really need to look at the three key sets of players, right? The entrepreneurs, the funders, and the government, and they all need to come together, right? And then to kind of create that kind of living ecosystem. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Manwei. Yes, the ecosystem of entrepreneurs, investors, and the government, each one having a part to play. Thank you, all our speakers.